One of the most common arguments made by Star Wars fans is that the Empire was not truly evil and that the Rebel Alliance was nothing more than a terrorist organization. Is that actually true? I'll be giving my opinion on today's Star Wars lore video. Hey guys, this is EckhartsLadder. Hello and welcome to another Star Wars lore episode. Today we are looking at the Galactic Empire, examining whether they were some sort of benevolent power and whether the Rebel Alliance was wrong to oppose them. I'll be giving my opinion on this topic, drawing primarily from current canon. I know I do usually focus more on Star Wars Legends, but because the current canon has really presented things in a more nuanced and gray manner, I think it'd be interesting to draw primarily from new sources. That being said, I think much of my arguments that I make today will apply equally to Star Wars Legends as to the current continuity. I'm going to give my opinion right off the back and then argue it throughout the rest of the video. The Empire was not good, and the Rebel Alliance was right to oppose them. I believe this for a bunch of reasons, and I'm going to go through them in order within this video. The first and perhaps most important reason why I think the Empire was bad and deserved to be toppled was because they had no accountability to the ordinary person. Really, the Empire had no accountability to anyone. Where the Republic was a democracy and the will of the people was absolute, the Empire was the opposite. It was a fascist dictatorship, or arguably stratocracy, where the average ordinary citizen had zero voice and zero impact on the ruling of the government. Sure, in early days the Imperial Senate technically did exist, but realistically it had absolutely zero power, and with A New Hope, it was abolished by Palpatine outright. This unchecked power meant the Empire had the ability to operate however it wanted within the galaxy, doing whatever it pleased without any legal way for citizens to oppose the government. This lack of accountability and Palpatine's manipulation of the Republic to the Empire is probably the single greatest reason why the organization was evil. As I mentioned, they could do whatever they wanted without fear of losing power. Probably the most egregious example of this was the destruction of Alderaan, where a peaceful planet with billions of people was destroyed in order to cause fear. Fear, and really the tight control on both systems and individuals, was another way that the Empire protected itself. Because there was no way to legally oppose the government, the only real way that the Empire could have fallen from outside forces was through some sort of armed rebellion. For that reason, the Empire heavily clamped down on both ship and weapon sales to those outside of the government. This, combined with an extraordinarily powerful military, again just reinforces the notion that the Empire could do whatever they wanted. Although personally I think the destruction of Alderaan alone would be enough to delegitimize the rule of the Empire, that is really only one way the Empire took advantage of its immense power. The Empire enslaved total worlds, subjugating the local populations and forcing them to work until their death. These enslaved people didn't do anything wrong, they weren't necessarily rebels, they just happened to be on a world that had resources the Empire needed. These enslaved people would often be used to strip mine or otherwise remove the resources from their home planet, and once finished, they'd basically be left to die. Worlds were often completely adapted to be a part of the Empire's war machine, with no thought of the citizens of the planet or the planet itself. Even if you weren't on one of these suppressed or enslaved planets, you had very little rights within the Empire. The Empire did not care about 99% of its citizens. Unless you were rich or within one of the core worlds, you probably didn't matter to the government. The Empire employed massive suppression of thought and free speech. We see an Inferno Squad that even speaking ill of the Empire could be enough to earn you the death penalty or perhaps lifelong imprisonment. Oh yeah, by the way, within the Empire you do not have the right to a fair trial. They'll give you a lawyer droid basically, but they have the ability to program it to defend you either as well or as poorly as they choose. That being said, often the Empire didn't deal with little things like trials anyways and would just shoot you in a back alleyway somewhere. Going back though to the suppression of speech, the Empire drastically limited communications between peoples. The most notable way this manifested was that the HoloNet, which is basically like the internet and the TV for people within the Star Wars universe, was generally limited to government-sponsored programs. That, combined with a high degree of Imperial propaganda, basically meant that large portions of the population were completely brainwashed. Unfortunately, this phenomenon became increasingly pronounced the closer you got to the galactic core, and thus the closer you got to any real position of power. Propaganda often contained messages of hate and especially xenophobia. This xenophobia would thus manifest in the most powerful people within the Empire who are subject to the most propaganda, and thus would manifest in the policy of the Empire. This xenophobia manifests itself indirectly and directly. Indirectly, we see, for example, that the Empire is made up of 90% humans. Admiral Thrawn's rise to the rank of Grand Admiral, for example, was exceptionally rare. Directly, we see xenophobia appear in various acts of the Empire, for example, the sterilization of the entire Geonosian species. Really, this expendability of all but the most elite within the Empire is another reason why the organization was so terrible. We see in the Inferno Squad novel that the Empire is totally okay with allowing the deaths of civilians or military officials if it serves the greater good. The jailing or killing of political rivals was often common, as we saw when Palpatine dissolved the Senate. The next thing I wanted to talk about is that the Empire totally allowed criminal gangs and organizations to exist outside of the galactic core. Not only that, but the Empire often made use of these organizations. Now, these are the type of things that have a net negative effect on much of the galaxy, especially the populace outside of the galactic core. Despite the fact that the Empire claims to be staunchly anti-criminal, and as we see in the Thrawn book, that possession of spice is enough to earn a death sentence for a person, this is really just an excuse for the Empire to be heavy-handed with how they dispense justice. In reality, the Empire would often work with, or at least turn a blind eye to many criminal enterprises, even those doing serious harm. Spice, slavery, bounty hunting, trafficking, all of these things were very common under the Empire. As an addendum to this, almost all commerce within the galaxy was imperialized. The free trade of goods was heavily restricted. This was just one further way for the Empire to subjugate its citizens and keep them at its whim. Finally, the last thing I want to mention is that the organs and the interior of the Empire is completely rotten. The Empire is made up of powerful, very corrupt individuals who administer government policy in a completely unfair way. There are no independent organizations. There's no fair courts. There's no government investigative bodies. There's no fair police force or military. Everything is under the control of a few people who don't even pretend to be fair. At the top of this is obviously Palpatine, the ultimate ruler of the entire galaxy. I mean, the fact that he's a Sith Lord and that he's running the government should be enough. Having unlimited power in one man who's been clearly corrupted by the dark side should be enough reason to get rid of the government and try with something else. This is especially true when he's fostered the kind of cult of personality that's developed within the galaxy. It's illegal to even say negative things about the Emperor. Also, given the fact that he illegally demolished the democratic government that came before him just so he personally would have more power, makes it fairly clear that the Empire is bad. When referring to legends, people often make the claim that, well, he knew the Yuuzhan Vong were coming, so he was just trying to militarize and prepare them for the eventual invasion. It is true that the Outbound Flight books tell us that Palpatine was aware, even during the time of the Republic, of far outsiders who presented a threat to the galaxy, and I will even accept, just for the purposes of arguing, that he was fully aware of the threat that the Vong presented. Yes, that does justify greatly expanding the military, but it doesn't justify the complete removal of individual rights and the fascist regime that he created. Palpatine wanted power. He created the organizational structure that would give him the most power. The fact that the Empire would have been prepared for a Yuuzhan Vong invasion was a nice bonus, but it wasn't anyway his intention, and it certainly doesn't excuse the way the Empire operated. In my mind, it's exceedingly clear the Empire was bad and the Rebel Alliance was 100% in the right to oppose the government. Yes, some of the new canon does present things as a bit more gray, but that's only at initial inspection. When you really read the source material, you realize that the Empire is 100% rotten to its core. When George Lucas created the Empire, it was supposed to be as a warning to the rest of us about what could happen with unchecked power and with the crumbling of democracy. There is also the claim that an imperial structure is needed to best manage the affairs and protect the galaxy as a whole. I have two responses to this. One, the Old Republic existed for thousands and thousands of years, and it seemed to be doing pretty well before it was co-opted by Palpatine. The second is that even if an imperial structure was needed to run the galaxy, the Empire wasn't the right one. This is recognized by Senator Ransom Casterfo during the Bloodlines novel. He was in favor of the imperial structure, but not the Empire himself, largely because he came from a subjugated world within the Old Empire. Yes, the Rebel Alliance did have to do some regrettable things. It sucks that civilians were killed during the attack on the Death Star and in various other Rebel attacks, but there was no other way to take down the Empire, who was clearly an evil within the galaxy. Killing a few civilians is bad and really regrettable, but allowing two planet-killing superweapons to exist and to have free reign within the galaxy is far, far worse. In conclusion, I think that it is very, very clear that the Empire was evil. If you want to call the rebels terrorists, that's fine, but they were terrorists with a righteous purpose. At least that's my opinion. I would love to hear what you guys have to say down in the comments, and if you totally disagree with my arguments in this video, make your own video and counter my points. I would love to hear what you guys have to say, and I would love to create some sort of dialogue. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, guys. As always, this has been EckhartsLadder. May the Force be with you.